Welcome to channel. We invite you to enjoy our new original short story. Katie used to be a happy young woman. She lived a carefree life in a beautiful bungalow with a garden, a legacy from her grandmother. She ate brownies, hung out with her friends, and was entirely her own person until she married Gregory. Or as her late grandmother Rita would have said, until she rushed into it. Katie met her future husband through work when she went to commission an ad campaign for a new residential complex her company was developing. Katie was a pretty natural blonde with an easygoing personality and a figure unburdened by diets. No, Katie wasn't overweight. She was curvy in a lovely way, just like many other young women. The gallant and tastefully dressed owner of the small boutique marketing agency captured the heart of the romantically inexperienced Katie at first sight. Swept away by what seemed to her an otherworldly male charm and good looks, Katie laid all her cards on the table during their very first date. She told Gregory everything, not forgetting to mention her grandmother's mortgage-free bungalow. Gregory, for his part, was an enterprising young man. Seeing this naive heiress to a valuable property who also earned a decent salary at a major real estate development firm, he thought, "I've got to lock this down. Otherwise, this clueless girl and her inheritance will end up with someone else." And so, on their 10th date or so, standing by a local ice cream shop, Gregory asked, as if on a whim, "Hey, kitten, what do you say we get married?" Katie was buying a cone for herself and her new favorite person, so the question, as welcome as it was, caught her completely off guard. Her already large sky-blue eyes widened as she stared at him. The girl behind the counter, who had never witnessed a proposal before, froze too, waiting with curiosity to see what the customer would say. "Okay. Yes, I will." Yay, Katie grinned broadly and threw her arms around Gregory, smearing her mint chocolate chip ice cream all over his blazer. "You're such a klutz, Katie," he grumbled, despite her joyful shout. "Honestly, you'll be taking this to the dry cleaners yourself." "Fine," Katie said, snuggling against his shoulder, her happiness bubbling over. As they walked away, the girl from the shop leaned out of the window and called after them, waving a $20 bill. "Ma'am, you forgot your change. You gave me way too much." Beaming, Katie looked back and replied, "It's okay, keep it. It's my special day, my treat." The girl smiled, watching the handsome couple. It was nice to have a little piece of their happiness shared with her. She looked at the bill. "Well, I guess I'll go to the movies." "Maybe I'll meet someone too," she mused. Katie and Gregory got married quietly, almost secretly. So secretly, in fact, that when Katie showed up to work with a wedding band on her finger and a new last name, the entire office gasped. "You're a sneaky one," marveled the HR manager, who was examining the marriage certificate as if under a microscope. "So you cheaped out on a wedding and didn't say a word to any of us." "Did your best friend even know?" Katie just shrugged, not wanting to answer. Her best friend Rose, who was also her colleague and sat at the desk directly across from hers, had not hit it off with Gregory, to put it mildly. "Can't you see he's after something?" Rose had asked bluntly when Katie first told her she was dating him. "Why would he propose so fast and so unromantically? What's there to take from me? I'm not some rich heiress." Katie had waved her off. "I'll introduce you to him and you'll see for yourself how wonderful my Greg is. He's so smart he started his business all on his own. He sold his car and his mother's condo that he was living in with her and invested it all. He has his own marketing agency now. Can you imagine? Greg has to crash on a friend's couch for now, but it's temporary." "And where's his mother living now?" Rose had smirked. "With his grandmother," I think. Katie shrugged. "He hasn't introduced me to her yet, but I'm sure he will." Rose knew her friend could be stubborn, so she understood that Katie needed someone looking out for her. She agreed to the meeting, which took place at Katie's bungalow. However, after noticing that Gregory seemed more interested in the house's layout and decor than in Katie, Rose saw right through his intentions. She called him out on it, which sent him into a rage and Katie into shock. "Get out," Gregory had hissed, his face red like a guilty child's. "Nobody asked for your opinion." "Katie, are you kicking me out too?" Rose looked directly at her friend. Katie lowered her eyes and answered softly as if reading from a script. "Yes, we think you're just jealous of my happiness, that's all." Rose's angry gaze shifted to the man who had put those words in her childhood friend's mouth. "I get it. Have a nice life. But just so you know, Katie, when he takes you for everything you've got, don't come crying to me." And Rose left, leaving a bitter feeling in the confused Katie's heart. She felt truly sorry for hurting her friend, but the thought of losing the man she loved was even more terrifying. Rose was not invited to the small wedding of just 8 people. And now at the office, Katie was ashamed to admit to her colleagues that her best friend knew nothing about her wedding. Katie walked to her desk and sat down across from Rose. Rose pretended not to notice anything, even though the whole department was buzzing about Katie's sudden marriage. "Hi, Rose," Katie said, smiling guiltily. She was already tired of their pointless feud. "Hello," Rose replied coolly, her eyes glued to a spreadsheet. It meant only one thing: Rose had not accepted her surrender. The Cold War would continue until her grudge against Katie had faded. And how long a woman can hold a grudge nobody knows, not even the woman herself. It's a law of nature. Katie didn't press the conversation. She knew that provoking Rose was like poking a bear. So, when Gregory brought up selling Katie's house, there was no one left to stand up for the naive girl who hung on her new husband's every word as if mesmerized. And so the grandmother's bungalow, with its lush garden and wrought iron fence built to last for generations, was sold for a handsome sum. It was enough to buy not only a spacious condo for the newlyweds, but also a brand new luxury import for Gregory. All Katie got from the sale were a pair of small white gold earrings with tiny sapphires that matched her eyes. Gregory put the condo in his name. When his wife reasonably asked why, he answered by stroking her hand and smiling languidly. "It's just simpler this way, kitten, you see. When we have kids, we'll need a bigger place, maybe even a large house. When there's only one owner, it's much easier to sell fewer questions from buyers. You agree, right?" At the mention of children, Katie's heart melted like butter on a hot pancake. She wanted a baby so badly. So Katie didn't argue with the husband she trusted implicitly. "I'm sorry, Greg," she stammered. "I didn't even think about that. Let's do it your way." To seal his position, Gregory twisted the knife. "Well, if you want, I can call my lawyer right now and deed you a share in the condo if the mother of my future children doesn't trust me." "I trust you, I do. Let's just leave it as it is," Katie said in a guilty voice, waving her hands, already regretting that she had brought it up. For a whole 6 months, Katie lived on cloud nine, enjoying married life and completely forgetting about her friend, and also about her conniving boss who was always trying to cause trouble for her. Gregory, on the other hand, was focused. His business had taken off thanks in no small part to Katie's help in funneling all of her company's marketing contracts through his agency. He even had to rent a larger office space and hire more staff as his business boomed and his status rose. Gregory started paying more attention to his appearance and to men's fashion. The first person to bring the cloud-drifting Katie back down to earth was her husband. "Listen, don't you think it's time you hit the gym? It looks like married life has added a few extra pounds." Naive Katie took the comment as a joke. "Oh, I don't have time for workouts. I already get up super early to catch the bus since you never give me a ride. And I'm always the last one to leave work because my boss Sharon is constantly burying me in paperwork. Plus, all the housework is on me. When am I supposed to find time for the gym? I'm lucky if I can squeeze in a manicure. If I went to the gym, I'd just lie down on a mat and fall asleep," she laughed. "I don't drive you because it's in the opposite direction," Gregory said, annoyed. "Fine, don't go if you don't want to. Nobody's forcing you. I'm going for a run. See you later." It even seemed to Katie that her husband was offended, but then she thought that if anyone had a right to be offended by those words, it was her, not him. She poured herself some tea and settled into her favorite armchair to watch her favorite show and unwind from her boss's tyranny. For a treat, Katie was about to grab a slice of chocolate cake, but changed her mind and opted for a marshmallow, telling herself she wouldn't gain extra calories since she wasn't out running in a dark park. Katie wanted to call Rose and for the first time in her life complain about her husband. He had basically called her fat, but then she remembered they weren't speaking. What a shame, such a great topic for gossip going to waste, Katie thought with a sigh. She missed Rose, and that feeling grew stronger every day, especially when her boss Sharon was taking bites out of poor Katie's confidence. Before they used to fend off that corrupt battle axe together, and quite successfully. Everyone in Katie's office knew that Sharon, the wife of one of the company's directors, took kickbacks and padded the books, submitting reports with inflated numbers. What's more, she would shamelessly hand these fraudulent reports to Katie and Rose at the very end of the day, hoping they'd be too tired and in a hurry to get home to notice the discrepancies. Discrepancies that could cost them not just their bonuses or their jobs, but could even lead to legal trouble. That was why Katie often had to stay late. "Let's just tell the board of directors about this crook," Rose had suggested in frustration more than once. "Are you crazy, Katie?" would reply, waving her hand. "One of them is her husband. You think he and people like him don't know what she's doing? You'll see, they'll make us the scapegoats." And so, the friends kept working covering for each other. But now that they had drifted apart like ships in the night, Sharon sensed a weakness and started churning out bogus reports by the dozen. The other employees felt helpless, continuing to rely on each other and play dumb as if their lives depended on it. A couple of people who had spoken out against the boss had already been fired without severance, and that terrified Katie's colleagues, who were just hoping the storm would pass them by. After all, nobody wanted to lose a good salary and big bonuses. Gregory was well aware of his wife's difficult situation at work from her complaints, but he did nothing to help her. One evening, tired and worn down by her boss's torment, Katie suddenly said to her husband, "Greg, please find me a job. I can't take this anymore. Not only does Sharon treat us like slaves, but Rose isn't speaking to me either. I'm at my breaking point. I'm constantly terrified that my department head is going to set me up to take a fall." Gregory reluctantly put down his phone where he had been texting with a sweet smile on his face. "And what am I supposed to do about it? Hire me at your agency," Katie suggested. "You said you were looking for an accountant. Well, here I am, an accountant." The smile instantly vanished from Gregory's face. "I already hired an accountant. 3 days ago. I can't just fire him. What would people say? That Greg Pierce doesn't keep his word. No respectable client would do business with me then. Besides, I pay my accountant less than what you make at your company. Can't you just tough it out a little longer?" Katie looked at her husband, hurt. "Actually, I'm your respectable client, in case you forgot. It's thanks to me that your agency is getting such big contracts, and for that I'm supposed to tough it out. Just admit it. Who are you texting while I'm talking to you?" Katie frowned. The accountant Gregory answered nervously, putting his phone away. "I see," Katie said reproachfully, and went to the kitchen to use her last ounce of energy to make dinner. On the other side of town, Gregory's accountant, a model named Bella, was fuming that her lover had so abruptly left their chat. Bella had met Gregory at a restaurant he frequented to, as he put it, maintain his image. And Gregory loved his image more than anything in the world, so he never denied himself anything. "I have to sit through another late-night dinner with clients tomorrow," Gregory would sigh dramatically. "But what won't you do for your own business? Got to go cast my pearls before swine, so to speak. So don't wait up for me for dinner." And Gregory would head to the bedroom, shuffling his feet with exaggerated weariness to show how much he dreaded spending time at the restaurant. Katie felt sorry for him and would even polish his shoes so her beloved husband wouldn't look like a slob in front of his clients. And Gregory would fall asleep anticipating his fun night out with his friends. It was on one of those evenings that Bella approached Gregory and asked him for a dance. "Lady's choice," she said coyly, giving him a sultry look with her big, dark eyes. A rare man could refuse such a beauty. A tall, slender brunette with a mane of long black hair, the complete opposite of Katie and Gregory, was no exception. The wine, the live music, and the girl's beauty went to Gregory's head and he got carried away. He started bragging about his marketing agency, how he had everything under control, how he was on top of the world. As he spoke, a drunk Gregory shook his fist at some unseen enemy. Bella laughed melodically and twirled on the dance floor, completely and irrevocably charming the usually cautious Gregory. That night, the romantic hero did not come home. "I'm drunk, kitten, so I'm staying at my buddy Vic Bennett's place." "Don't worry about me," he informed his wife and hung up. Katie, completely bewildered by the situation, stared at her phone as if it were to blame for everything. She had no choice but to believe her husband's story, as she couldn't verify it by calling his friend. Because in reality, there was no Vic Bennett. "You just wait," Katie said aloud, resolving to quietly find out who this Vic was. Meanwhile, Gregory, having spent the night with Bella, who turned out to be a model, had solved two problems at once. He acquired a mistress for his personal life and a new employee for his promotional events. He was, of course, completely unaware that the enterprising Bella already had another lover. He saved her number in his phone as Vic Bennett, just in case. And Katie also, just in case, saved that number in her phone under the name Victor Bennett, husband's friend, so she'd know who to call next time if need be. A month went by, and the lovers saw each other almost every day. When Gregory was bored, he would text with Bella. It was during one of these exchanges that Katie had caught him when she was asking him for a job and complaining about her fate. Needless to say, the cheater couldn't have cared less about her suffering, and he simply couldn't hire her at his agency for fear of his wife and mistress meeting. It was Bella who lost her patience first. Like a furious harpy, she cornered Gregory in a restaurant and declared for all to hear, "When are you going to tell your wife about us? You promised you'd divorce her, and now what? You chicken." No one had ever called Gregory chicken before, and he hated the feeling of being caught in a lie. To make matters worse, the other restaurant patrons were curiously eyeing the attractive couple, wondering how the drama would unfold. Gregory had no choice but to promise his lady love that he would sort everything out. Of course, in his right and sober mind, the cunning womanizer had no intention of confessing anything to the convenient and comfortable Katie. But he didn't want to break things off with the beautiful Bella either. So after dropping his mistress off at her place, he bought his favorite dessert, a rich chocolate fudge cake, and headed home whistling a cheerful tune. Besides, the football game was about to start. But the miracle he hoped for didn't happen. Gregory couldn't have his cake and eat it too. At home, he was met by a tear-stained Katie phone in hand. "What are you crying about? Trouble at work again?" Gregory asked reluctantly, having no desire to get involved in his wife's problems. "Your friend," called Katie, answered in a choked voice, looking her husband straight in the eye. Gregory looked away. "Who Vic Bennett?" Katie said curtly. Gregory flinched as if doused with ice water. He looked at his wife, who had him cornered. Katie continued. "Your Vic said that you've been in love for a long time and that you're planning to divorce me. Is that true? What's her real name?" Gregory hung his head like a guilty schoolboy. "Bella." Katie let out a bitter laugh. "Your Bella is a smart woman. She was right. You are getting a divorce. I'm filing the papers tomorrow. You betrayed me." Gregory held out the cake to Katie and, trying to turn the serious conversation into a joke, said, "Come on, let's just forget about it like it never happened. It'd be a shame to throw away these 3 years. We were so comfortable together. Come on, kitten, let's have some tea." Katie was in shock. "Are you out of your mind? What tea? I'm supposed to forgive you for having an affair with a woman who claims you have long-term plans with her? So you never loved me? You were just comfortable with me? Oh no, Greg. I'm not letting you use me anymore. Get out of my house." Gregory, not expecting such spirit from his usually submissive wife, finally dropped his mask and showed his true colors. He smirked coldly, his once handsome face twisted into a mask of hatred, his eyes looking like they could drill a hole through her. "Fine. I am so sick of you anyway. It's embarrassing to be seen in public with you. No style, no class, no taste. Bella, on the other hand, is gorgeous, and we look great together. And by the way, this house isn't yours, it's mine. Got it, the condo is in my name, and so is the car. So you'll be left with nothing, Cinderella, just a pile of your frumpy old clothes. Ciao, loser." With those words, Gregory kicked the door open and walked out. Katie was so furious that, blinded by rage and hurt, she opened the window and launched the cake straight at her husband's polished-to-a-shine car. The chocolate fudge splattered across the hood, smearing greasy streaks on the windshield. "You're insane!" Gregory yelled when he saw his favorite cake smeared all over his new car. He shook his fist at Katie, quickly got into the car and sped off just as he saw her ominously pick up a potted plant from the windowsill. Gregory drove off to his mistress's, and Katie was left to contemplate her bleak situation. The entire next month passed in a blur for Katie. She had no desire to eat, take care of herself, or do anything at all. She went through the motions at the office, came home, grabbed a large tub of ice cream or a pastry from the nearby bakery, turned on a TV show, and ate her dessert without a second thought about her figure. And her figure suffered just as much as Katie did. So much so that people at work started speculating that Katie was pregnant. "I wonder when she's going on maternity leave," the secretary whispered to Sharon. "That's all we need, another one on maternity leave," the boss snapped, as if she didn't have 2 children of her own, a 9-year-old daughter and a son in 5th grade. Rose also noticed the changes in her friend, but she chose to remain silent as the chill between her and Katie was still very much present. Katie wanted to make peace with Rose, but she dreaded hearing that annoying phrase that people who turn out to be right love to say, "I told you so." So Katie kept gaining weight and kept quiet about the collapse of her marriage. A week later, it was Gregory himself who, oddly enough, helped Katie pull herself together. His help had such an effect on Katie that she quickly got a grip, went on a diet, and started putting her life and affairs in order. "Listen, kitten," Gregory said, his voice as affectionate as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just betrayed his wife. "I was thinking it's not right for us to part like this. Maybe you could move out of my condo. It's too big for you all by yourself." Her husband's indifference struck Katie to the core, but she didn't scream or waste her energy. She just asked, "And where am I supposed to go?" Gregory spread his hands. "I don't know. Figure it out yourself. You're a big girl now. If you want, you can stay at Bella's studio apartment for a while. There's enough room for you. It's fine for a single person." The word "single" cut Katie deeply. Her husband wasn't mincing words. She quietly stood up and walked to her room, leaving him bewildered. "So, is that a yes or a no?" Gregory called after her. There was no answer, but he understood what it would be. What a psycho. You try to help her and she gets all difficult. Thinks she's some kind of beauty queen. Her husband truly didn't hold back. Gregory left, and Katie looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a sad, slightly plump young woman who had let herself go but who was still attractive. "Who did I let myself fall apart for? You're so weak. Look at what you've become," Katie mentally scolded herself. "My mom raised me to be happy, and that means I will be happy, period. To hell with Greg, I can do without him. Katie looked around. The apartment, like herself, was in a state of neglect. The court date was a month away. It was time to get her act together, and that's exactly what Katie did. First, she deep-cleaned the entire apartment and signed up for Pilates. With 2 days left until the court date, a noticeably slimmer and more radiant, Katie stopped by a trendy boutique after work. The dresses in the window were always the most beautiful, but unfortunately, they never came in a size larger than a medium. So Katie used to just walk by with a sigh, feeling that such beauty was forever out of reach for her because of her curves. But that was then. Now Katie confidently walked into the elegant, perfume-scented boutique and told the sales associate who approached her, "I'd like that blue dress, please." Half an hour later, Katie walked out of the store proudly, not with one but with 3 designer shopping bags that seemed to scream to passers-by, "This girl is a true knockout." The court hearing was scheduled for the same time Katie was supposed to submit her reports to Sharon. Wearing her new dress, Katie stood before her boss and stated flatly, "I have to go to court. I need to take 2 hours off." Sharon looked at the slimmed-down Katie over her glasses and smirked. "Well, taking 2 hours off isn't the same as going on maternity leave. So go on. You don't have to come back today. You can come in tomorrow." Her boss's unexpected generosity surprised Katie but didn't alarm her. It should have. After she left, Sharon doctored Katie's reports and forged her signature. The full responsibility for the fraud now fell on the accountant. However, Katie's guardian angel was on watch. Rose noticed the discrepancy and intercepted the documents from Sharon's secretary after Sharon had gone home for the day. She always left earlier than her subordinates. "Do you realize you could get fired for this?" the secretary asked, Rose frightened. "If I get fired, I get fired." "At least Katie won't end up behind bars," Rose replied, handing her the corrected report that she had redone herself. "File this, Marina. Otherwise, that witch is going to drag us all down with her." Katie had no idea about the sacrifice her former friend was making for her. She had other things on her mind. She was staring at Gregory, who had arrived with Bella on his arm. Only now did Katie get a good look at her rival. Bella was wearing a revealing outfit, a crop top, and a miniskirt that looked more like a belt. Heavy makeup completed her look. Gregory, too, was looking at his wife with curiosity, surprised by the changes in her over just 1 month. Katie looked lovely in the blue dress that so complemented her sky-blue eyes. Her hair was neatly styled in a low bun with a few stray curls framing her face, which was enhanced by a delicate barely there makeup. "And you said your wife was fat," Bella declared loudly enough for the judge, who also happened to be a woman, to hear. The judge looked first at Bella, who was lounging in her chair and clinging to Gregory's arm like a wild cat to its prey, and then at Katie, who was sitting quietly and patiently awaiting her fate. "Mr. Greg Pierce, you may speak," the judge said to Gregory, her voice even and emotionless, though she clearly wanted to say more. And Gregory, pointing a finger at Katie, accused her of every sin imaginable, emphasizing that the condo and the car should be awarded to him. Then Katie was asked to speak. "I don't know what to say, Your Honor," Katie admitted quietly. "They say love lasts for 3 years. That's how long my husband and I were married. I guess the warranty just ran out." A ripple of laughter went through the courtroom. Even the judge smiled. There were only a few minutes left before the verdict was announced. In that time, Katie had already mentally resigned herself to being homeless, while Gregory smiled smugly, confident of his victory over a defenseless woman. When the judge announced her decision, the smile vanished from the face of Katie's now ex-husband. All marital property, including the car, was to be divided equally. "What does that mean? Now you have to share with that frump," Bella screeched, with no regard for anyone else present. "Good thing you transferred your business to my name, or she would have grabbed that too." The nerve of her look at her Gregory shushed his mistress, and she fell silent, glaring at Katie. For Katie, it was as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She wouldn't be homeless. The fact that she wouldn't get half of her ex-husband's business didn't bother her at all. "I don't want what isn't mine," she thought, and walked out of the courthouse, a free woman. But just as Katie was about to turn the corner, her ex-husband roughly grabbed her arm. "You think you won, you little schemer? I'm going to make your life a living hell. I'll pay you for my half of the car in installments. Tiny ones. It'll take 5 years. So don't count on getting rich. And with the condo, you have 2 options, either sell me your share or put up with tenants." "And how much are you offering for my half?" Katie asked. But when she heard the figure, she just waved her hand in disgust. "That's peanuts. Are you kidding me? I couldn't even buy a room in a shared apartment with that. Have a conscience, Greg. Just give me the money from my grandmother's house and you can have the condo." At that, Gregory just smirked and gave Katie a rude gesture. While Katie stood there in shock at her ex-husband's stunt, Gregory got into his car whistling and drove away. And Katie knew that the living hell he had promised her was guaranteed. Katie's morning started with a surprise, an unpleasant one. She was in the bathroom and had just lathered her face when she heard someone unlock the front door and walk into the entryway. Judging by the sound, they didn't take off their shoes. "I just mopped the floors yesterday. Greg, for God's sake, have some decency." With those words, Katie, her face covered in foam and wearing a short nightgown, stormed out of the bathroom to confront her ex-husband. But it wasn't her husband in the living room. It was a complete stranger, surrounded by several other people who all froze and stared at her as if she were an alien. "Ah, help, I'm being robbed," Katie shrieked, like a siren darted into the bedroom and locked the door. "What is with that crazy woman? Where did you bring us?" a woman in the group demanded, glaring at the man with the keys. He flinched and dropped the keys. "I don't know myself. The client assured me no one was living here and that he was the sole owner, but that was a week ago." Then the strangers heard the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor in the bedroom, likely a dresser being pushed against the door. Katie could be heard muttering something barely audible through the door. Torn in broad daylight. Calling the police. The man with the keys approached Katie's door and knocked gently. The noise stopped. "Ma'am," the man said calmly, "I'm sorry we scared you, but Gregory said this condo was for sale and asked me to show it to potential buyers. I'm a real estate agent. My name is Arthur. Here's my card." Yes, he's telling the truth. "We're the potential buyers," the woman confirmed. Arthur slipped his business card under the bedroom door. A few minutes later, the door opened and Katie appeared. She was wearing a tracksuit and holding a baseball bat. Even through the foam, her face looked flushed with anxiety. "You should probably wash that foam off your face, miss, or you'll get a rash," the woman advised Katie, pointing to her face. "Oh," Katie darted into the bathroom and emerged a moment later, wiping her face with a towel. "Please forgive us." "This is so awkward," Arthur said, embarrassed by the mix-up. "So what's your story here? I live here. I've lived here ever since my husband and I bought the place. We got divorced yesterday, and he promised to make my life a living hell if I didn't sell him my share for cheap." The clients gasped, and the real estate agent frowned. "Well, in that case, not on my watch," said Arthur. "And not on ours," the visitors chimed in. "Let's get out of here." "And you, miss, you hang in there." "I don't have much of a choice," Katie replied. 3 hours later, a locksmith she had called changed the lock. So the next day, Gregory, cursing under his breath, tried to open the door but couldn't get in. Katie found him sitting on the steps in the hallway. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for someone," Katie said with a smirk, pulling out her new keys and opening the door. "Come on in, Greg." Gregory jumped up, his face red with anger. "You bet I'll come in. I have every right." "Who's arguing?" Katie giggled, which only fueled her ex-husband's rage. "Why did you change the locks without telling me, huh?" Gregory yelled as soon as he was inside. "And why did you try to sell your half and give keys to the place where I live alone to strangers without telling me, huh?" Katie shot back just as loudly. Gregory, not expecting this pushback, toned it down a notch. "I have the right." "Well, so do I," Katie retorted. "Did you come here to divide the condo?" "Yes." "All right then, let's get started," Katie sighed, sitting down. The result of their argument was an agreement from that day on. The bedroom and the small office belonged to Katie. The living room and the room with the balcony belonged to Gregory. The entryway, bathroom, and kitchen were designated as common areas. A notary was brought in to formalize the contract, which stipulated that changing the locks without the consent of both owners was prohibited. Katie felt a sense of relief, but it was short-lived. Just 2 days later, when she came home from work, she found another group of people inspecting the apartment, or rather Gregory's half, under the guidance of a new real estate agent. This agent was the most unpleasant person one could imagine. An arrogant, rude, skinny, bald little man with shifty, greasy eyes. His clients weren't much better. When Katie walked into the kitchen, she saw a woman standing in the middle of the room in her dirty shoes, rummaging through the pots and pans, and already snacking on some ham she had taken from the fridge without asking. Chewing on the savory slices, she drank tea from Katie's mug, and under the astonished gaze of the homeowner declared, "You should wash your pots better." "Are you a slob or something?" Katie, blushing from such audacity, barely restrained herself from pouring the rest of the tea over the stranger's head. It wasn't so much about the expensive ham she had been saving for herself as it was about the real estate agent's client's complete lack of decorum. "Get the hell out of here," Katie shouted instinctively, understanding that rudeness could only be fought with more rudeness. "Trying to steal my food, are you? Hey, realtor, you'll owe me for your client's behavior." "And you, what are you waiting for? Get going." "Shoo." Katie wasn't a confrontational person and didn't like to argue, but in her dealings with Gregory and his ilk, she had learned that responding to such scoundrels' malice with kindness was a fool's errand. So she decided to put on a one-woman show every time the realtor visited. Katie walked into the living room and plopped down on the couch. She stared and giggled, mimicking the flustered realtor who, based on what Gregory had told him, probably thought Katie would be an easy target, a victim. But seeing the feisty behavior of the owner of half the condo, he realized he had been gravely mistaken and that a serious battle lay ahead. "You know, I'm thinking of selling my half to a bunch of college students," Katie suddenly announced. "I mean, they need a place to live too, right? And they're offering a good price. What do you think, should I take it?" Upon hearing this, the woman who had been eating the ham shot a nasty look at the brazen homeowner, the same one Gregory had described as a quiet crybaby who could be easily manipulated. She grabbed the scrawny little man, who was clearly afraid of her, by the sleeve and dragged him toward the exit. "Where are you going?" Katie cooed in a sultry voice, barely holding back her laughter. The only answer was the slam of the front door. The realtor looked at Katie and managed to squeeze out, "You're something else, lady. We'll see who wins this," and shaking his bony little fist, he left. Suddenly, Katie was overcome with such a fit of laughter that she couldn't stop for a long time. And then she cried. The tears washed away the accumulated resentment and fear. From that day on, Katie lived in constant anticipation of the lock clicking and strangers barging into her home without any ceremony. Katie couldn't relax, couldn't even eat in peace. Every minute she felt like some gawker was about to start staring at her and touching her things. The last straw was her grandmother's broken vase. It was all that was left of the valuables Katie had sold for Gregory's sake. It was he who had insisted on selling her grandmother's house and the collection of antiques the old woman had spent her life gathering. The only thing Katie hadn't been able to part with was a Chinese vase from the Qing dynasty. And now, coming home after a long day at work, Katie was horrified to see blue and white shards of her grandmother's vase scattered on the floor. Anger and hurt took over, and with trembling hands, Katie dialed her ex-husband's number. "Greg, who broke my grandmother's vase? It's in pieces, there's no way to fix it," Katie cried into the phone, her voice choked with grief. "It was a memento of my grandma." "Stop tormenting me." Gregory reveled in his ex-wife's sorrow, believing she had unfairly gotten half the house and car. So he replied with a smirk. "Big deal. A little vase broke. What's the problem? The main thing is everyone's alive and well. That Bella of yours was a bit clumsy when she was looking at it. Sorry these things happen. But it was a memento." Katie couldn't wrap her head around how someone could break a vase and not even bother to clean up the pieces. "Oh, please," Gregory drawled. "If you want, I'll buy you a new vase, just stop whining." And he hung up. Where he planned to find an identical Chinese vase was a mystery to Katie. But one thing was clear, she had to sell her half of the condo or she would have no peace here. And Katie called Arthur. Luckily, she had kept his business card. He promised to help and let her know the outcome in a few days. In the meantime, Katie gathered the shards of her grandmother's vase, which mirrored her shattered life. For the entire evening and the next morning, Katie stayed in her bedroom to avoid seeing the realtor parading strangers through her home. Someone even tried to force their way into her room, jiggling the doorknob, but the lock installed by the local handyman Uncle Sal held firm. 3 days later, Arthur called, and from his tone, Katie knew the news wouldn't be good. "I'll be straight with you," Arthur said seriously into the phone. "You're not going to be able to sell this condo. Your ex-husband's realtor has spread a rumor that a tragedy occurred in your home. No one even wants to look at it. And if someone does buy it, it will be for pennies on the dollar. I'm sorry I did everything I could." "Thank you, Arthur. I had a feeling Gregory would do something nasty." "How much do I owe you for your time?" "Nothing," Arthur replied and hung up. Katie's spirits sank. She didn't know what to do or where to go. The only person who could help her was angry with her. "Oh, Rose, if only you knew how much I miss you," Katie thought through her tears. But she had no idea that Rose had just saved her from a much bigger trouble that Katie in her naivety had almost fallen into because of Sharon. That evening, the next blow fell. Gregory showed up with his mistress. While Bella inspected the apartment, appraising things that didn't belong to her, Gregory spoke to Katie in a very harsh tone. "You know, I'm a practical man, and my share of this condo should be generating income. So I've decided to rent my part out to 2 guys. There's just one catch. Because I'm not asking for their IDs, they're paying me double the rent. It's a lot of money, you understand." So, I agreed. "They'll be moving in 3 days, so don't be surprised." "What if they're criminals?" Katie asked, frightened. "Most likely," Gregory replied. "They've already paid the deposit. They'll pay the rest when they move in." "But what about me?" How am I supposed to live in the same apartment with two criminals? Katie exclaimed. That's your problem, Gregory answered, his eyes narrowing slyly. But there is a way out. What is it? You sell me your share and move out, Gregory said firmly. And Katie knew she was backed into a corner. Had she ever imagined it would come to this? All right, Katie said, her voice cracking. I'll sell you my share. That's more like it, Gregory exclaimed, happily pulling out ready-made documents from his briefcase. Sign here and here. Once the deal was finalized, Gregory stood up to leave. Oh, and one more thing, he turned and looked at Katie mockingly. I'll wire you the money tomorrow morning. And in 3 days I expect you to vacate the premises. And he left, holding the hand of the beautiful Bella, who disdainfully stepped on the simple flats Katie had left by the door. Ugh, what a lack of taste. Let's get out of here, darling. Katie was left standing there humiliated, and crushed tears streaming down her cheeks with no one to stand up for her. The next day, Katie came to work, looking devastated, sleep-deprived, her face swollen from crying all night. She didn't even notice that the whole office was buzzing like a beehive about Rose being fired for a disciplinary infraction. Everyone knew it was Sharon's doing, but they were too afraid to support their colleague. I'm sorry, Rose, but I can't tell the truth. I'm scared, one of the employees whispered. I have a mortgage. Where would I go if I got fired? And everyone else will keep quiet too. Some have kids in college, others are in the middle of building a house. I'm sorry, but people aren't going to risk their necks for you. Not for me, for themselves, Rose answered firmly. How much longer can we put up with this tyrant? You all can do what you want, but I'm getting out of here. It was only when Rose was packing her things into a box that Katie snapped out of her own problems and noticed what was happening. Rose, where are you going? Katie asked. Home. What do you mean home? What happened? Rose looked at her friend in surprise and suddenly realized from Katie's exhausted appearance and dull eyes that something far worse than being fired had happened in her life. I got fired. But what's up with you, spill it? And Rose put the box down on the desk, sobbing and smearing her runny mascara across her cheeks. Katie briefly told Rose everything that had happened to her over the last month. And you kept silent, Rose exclaimed. Well, you were mad at me. I thought it was forever, Katie tried to explain. But not to that extent. Am I your enemy or something? Look, don't you get involved in anything right now. I know what you're like, Rose warned. After work, you're going home, packing a suitcase, and coming straight to my place. Got it. You'll stay with me. Katie nodded. Even though Rose was angry with her, she hadn't given up on their friendship and had offered her a helping hand. It was as if a weight had been lifted from Katie's soul. After Rose left, her colleagues told Katie how Rose had saved her from legal trouble and had been fired for it. And Katie decided that no matter what, she would expose her boss and bring her to justice. Katie had 3 days to pack her things and leave the apartment where she had lived with Gregory for 3 years. She stood in the middle of the living room and suddenly saw everything with new eyes. The decor, the renovations, even the furniture slipcovers, everything had been bought against Katie's wishes but to please Gregory. It really is tasteless, Katie smirked, remembering Bella's words. And not wanting to stay in this house that no longer belonged to her for another minute, Katie went to the storage closet to get a suitcase. A long time ago, when Katie was just a girl, her grandmother had bought her a big yellow suitcase to take on their family beach vacations. They never stayed in hotels. Instead, they would go straight from the airport to her grandmother's friend Aunt Nina's house. Aunt Nina lived in a small house by the sea. A spacious porch was attached to the house where her parents, grandmother, and little Katie would comfortably settle in during their vacation. And now, behind the creaky closet door, Katie saw that same yellow suitcase, its leather slightly worn with wide straps. Wiping off the dust, Katie opened the suitcase and found something that made her heart ache. A forgotten old friend, a plush teddy bear with buttons for eyes, a kaleidoscope, childhood photos from the beach, a large seashell holding a collection of colorful sea-polished stones, and a couple of handmade Christmas ornaments. And there was also a postcard with a drawing of a dolphin, and a message written in a boyish hand. Katie, come back soon. I'll be waiting, Liam. Warm memories washed over Katie like a sea wave, and tears of tenderness welled up in her eyes. Katie remembered Liam, a tanned, barefoot boy with sun-bleached hair and cute freckles on his nose. He was Aunt Nina's grandson, and she thought a few years older than her. She didn't remember exactly how much older, and it didn't matter. What mattered was that Liam was Katie's first love. Every time she saw him, her heart would flutter and she would want to smile from ear to ear. And Liam was always happy to see her too. Together, they would run to the pier to watch the ships and collect seashells on the shore. It was Liam who had taught Katie to swim reasonably well. Oh, what wonderful times those were. I'd give anything to be back there again, Katie thought, gathering her precious mementos. 3 hours later, she was at Rose's place. Her friend had baked pies in anticipation of her arrival. It smells so delicious. Raspberry pies just like Aunt Nina's, Katie exclaimed, joyfully inhaling the sweet berry aroma. Who's Aunt Nina? Rose asked. And Katie told her about the closet, the suitcase, and the memories. Rose glanced at the yellow suitcase by the door and suddenly burst out laughing. What's so funny? Katie asked. Well, it's summer now and you have a week of vacation coming up. So why don't you fly down and visit, Aunt Nina, Rose suggested. I don't even know if she's still alive. I don't have her number. How can I just show up? What would I say? Hi, I'm your long-lost niece, Katie asked. Well, you can find out. Maybe the woman needs help, Rose insisted. And if things don't work out, you can always get a hotel room. Katie looked at her friend quizzically, then smiled. Rose always knew how to distract her from her troubles. The money Gregory had transferred for Katie's share of the condo was just enough for a plane ticket, a hotel stay if needed, and to rent an apartment upon her return. Though Rose immediately dismissed the last point, insisting that Katie stay with her until she had fully recovered from the divorce. And Katie decided to do it. She was heading south to the place where she had left her best childhood memories. No sooner said than done. And so, the airplane, its silver wing gleaming in the summer sun, carried Katie to the place she was irresistibly drawn to, a place where she could heal the emotional wounds inflicted by her now ex-husband. Finding Aunt Nina's house was easy for Katie. The small southern town had barely changed. The same pier, the same rose-filled square with a large fountain and flowers everywhere, their fragrance lingering in the air and stirring her emotions. Hey miss, rent a room cheap, a real palace you interested? A spry man in a cap asked, spotting Katie with her suitcase. No thank you, I'm staying with my aunt, Katie replied, disappointing the owner of the palace. On her way to the house, several other enterprising Southerners offered her lodging, but they too were turned down. Finally, Katie saw the familiar tiled roof. She sighed in relief. Katie walked up to the high fence and smiled. Even the gate was the same and the same secret latch. With a click, the bolt slid open, letting Katie into the familiar courtyard draped in ripe grapevines. The small garden brought back happy memories. Here, she and Liam used to sit under the apple tree, eating apricots they had picked themselves. Only the trees seemed much bigger back then. Who are you looking for, dear? And how did you manage to open that gate? I'm not renting out rooms. A soft, velvety voice came from an open window. Katie recognized it immediately, and a warmth spread through her heart. She looked into the window and saw a round-faced, gray-haired old woman with deep smile lines around her eyes. The old woman was peering at the young woman's face, trying to place it. Aunt Nina, it's me, Katie, Rita's granddaughter. Do you remember me? Katie asked, quietly afraid the elderly woman might have forgotten her completely after so many years. But Katie was wrong. The old woman's face lit up, and her eyes, still so lively and sharp for her advanced age, sparkled with joy. Oh my goodness, I was just thinking that girl's face looks so familiar, the same button nose, the same eyes, just like my dear friend. May she rest in peace, Aunt Nina exclaimed, clapping her hands. Come in, my dear. I'm not exactly a girl anymore, I'm 30, Katie laughed. Of course you're a girl, Katie dear, the old woman waved her hand. You'll all always be boys and girls to me, my dear children. The next moment, hurried footsteps were heard in the house's entryway, and the spry old woman scurried out to embrace the Katie she remembered as a little girl. Before Katie could even gasp, she was enveloped in a tight, warm hug, and she realized what she had been missing all this time. Family. A real family, not the kind she had with Gregory. A lump formed in her throat, and the pain of resentment and loneliness burst out in a flood of tears. Katie wept, weeping her heart out without shame or trying to hide her tears. And Aunt Nina just stood there silently stroking Katie's head, letting her cry it all out. The wise woman understood that her girl had traveled so far after all these years for a reason, to heal her soul. It must be hard for them in those big cities. So lonely, even with all those people, Aunt Nina thought. I wonder how my Liam is doing. Why did I let him go to those foreign lands? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cry. It just came out, Katie said, sniffling. It's all right, my child. A person needs to cry just as much as they need to laugh, the old woman soothed her. Tears cleanse the soul and keep it from growing hard. When Katie and Aunt Nina, arm in arm, entered the house, the young woman gasped. Everything inside was just as she remembered from her childhood. Nothing had changed. The sturdy wooden furniture was perfectly preserved and continued to serve its owner. The lace doilies on the pillows, neatly stacked on the feather bed, brought on such a sharp wave of nostalgia for her happy childhood that Katie's eyes began to sting again. What, remembering how you and Liam used to run wild and I'd chase you with a broom? You were mischievous little rascals, but now you're all so businesslike, scattered all over the world. How time flies. And now my dear friend is gone. Aunt Nina sat down on the creaky sofa and dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Katie looked at her and saw not the spry, full-of-life woman she remembered, but an old woman tired in her loneliness. Katie sat down next to her and put her arm around her shoulders. If you'd like, I can come visit you every vacation. And for all the holidays, too, Katie offered. I'm sorry it's been so many years without a letter or a call, and then I just show up. It just sort of happened. I saw my grandma's old suitcase and just came. And who's scattered all over the world? I remember that suitcase, Aunt Nina said, sniffing. I'm so glad you came. Liam was planning on stopping by in a few days. He's the one who's become a world traveler, always expanding his business, as if he doesn't have enough companies here. He's started 3 whole firms, can you imagine? He'd be better off starting a family. I want to hold my great-grandchildren. Katie laughed. The old woman's complaints were endearing, allowing her to forget her own troubles. Oh, what am I doing, getting all sentimental? Aunt Nina clapped her hands. A girl comes all this way and still hasn't been fed. For shame. You, Katie, dear, go get washed up in the bathhouse. You know where everything is right. Oh, dear me, old age is no joy. And Aunt Nina bustled off to the kitchen, tying on her apron. Whether it was the joy of their reunion or the feeling that Katie was finally in her rightful place, the resentment towards her ex-husband and the weight of her troubles, which had been pressing down on her heart, simply vanished. Her soul felt so light and joyful as if the last 18 years had never happened, and she was still that little girl Katie. Mashed potatoes with meatballs and fluffy pancakes with cold milk, that was all she needed right now. And then a deep sleep on a feather bed as soft as a cloud. This is happiness, Katie thought, and immediately fell into a sound, dreamless sleep for the first time in a long while. Aunt Nina turned off the lamp and quietly closed the bedroom door. She knew something terrible had happened to Katie and was waiting for her guest to tell her everything herself. Katie woke up early the next morning to the sound of waves. She felt well-rested and happier than ever. Good morning, early bird, the old woman smiled at her. Sit down, let's have breakfast. Eat 'em while they're hot. And Aunt Nina placed a stack of pancakes in front of Katie. Next to the plate of fluffy pancakes, bowls of thick sour cream and raspberry jam magically appeared. Oh wow, this looks amazing, Katie exclaimed, and dug in, mentally bidding farewell to her diet. It was simply impossible to resist such a treat, and Aunt Nina watched with delight as the fragrant stack of pancakes quickly disappeared, happy that someone appreciated her efforts. Katie spent the whole day by the sea. Aunt Nina wouldn't let her swim because of the strong wind and the storm was kicking up large waves. Katie contented herself with walking along the water's edge, squealing with delight each time the frothy, bubbling sea foam tried to splash her sundress. The next day, the storm had subsided, but there were still very few brave swimmers. The waves were still large. At this rate, I'll spend my whole vacation just walking on the beach, Katie said with frustration. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And slipping off her light sundress, Katie ran into the water and plunged into the warm embrace of the sea. Katie hadn't felt this good in a long time. The storm seemed to have completely died down, and other vacationers began to venture into the water closer to the shore. Katie, however, decided to swim out a bit further. The fact that she could see the bottom gave her confidence. Suddenly, someone on the shore shouted, "Big wave, get out!" Katie looked back and froze. About 30 feet away from her, a wall of dark water was rising. Katie started swimming towards the shore, but it was too late. The powerful wave crashed over her head, flipping her like a twig. Katie was pulled underwater. She opened her eyes. The receding wave was dragging her out to sea. Don't panic, Katie thought, trying with all her might to fight the riptide. But she was running out of strength. Her body was being pulled down, her mind clouded with shock. The fear of not being able to touch the bottom, exhaustion and despair played their cruel trick. Katie began to drown. She broke the surface, raised her hand above the water and managed to cry out, "Mom," before being pulled under again. And in the distance, another wave was approaching. "Someone's drowning! Help over there!" a child's voice shouted from somewhere far away. Katie heard it as if through cotton. She was critically low on air and she had no strength left to surface and take a breath. So this is it. I'm going to die in the sea, she thought with self-pity. Rose would have laughed at me. How ridiculous! Suddenly someone grabbed her by the hair and pulled her to the surface. "Breathe," a male voice commanded. By the time they reached the shore, Katie had used her last ounce of strength and passed out. A minute later, she came to coughing up seawater. "Drink this." A man's hand offered her a bottle of water. "I don't want to, I've had enough," Katie said weakly to the hand. "Drink." And Katie obeyed, taking a few sips, and then realized she felt much better. She turned and looked in surprise at the young man who had saved her. Water was streaming from his clothes. "Thank you," Katie said quietly. "You're welcome," the man replied. "Who goes swimming in a storm? I thought I could handle it." "I thought wrong," she added. "What's your name, Katie?" The man froze and looked at her intently. "Anderson, Katie," hiccuped her eyes wide as she stared at her rescuer. "It used to be." "Why? How do you know that? Who are you?" The man laughed. "Girls have such short memories." "Well, hello there, tadpole." Katie scrambled to her feet and ran to the man. "Liam, hi!" she exclaimed, hugging her childhood friend. "Let's go home," he said. "Grandma sent me to find you as soon as I walked in the door. She had a feeling something bad would happen." "Look, don't tell her anything." "Of course," Katie nodded, and suddenly started to cry. "I'm so happy to see you." "Happy to see me, huh?" Liam said, surprised. "All right, spill it. What's been going on with you all these years?" And as they walked home, Katie told her friend everything that had happened to her, not even forgetting about Sharon and her current situation. "I see," Liam said, his brow furrowed. "Life has really beaten you up. And now I want to start over with a clean slate," Katie said, and missed the faint smile that crossed Liam's face. 3 weeks flew by. During that time, Katie's old feelings for Liam reignited. It was as if her first love had never gone away, but had just been sitting quietly in a far corner of her heart, waiting for its moment. Liam reciprocated her feelings and even suggested that Katie stay or go with him to become his right-hand person at one of his companies. Katie regretfully declined. "I love you, Liam, but I can't leave Rose high and dry right now. I told you she got fired because of me, and I want to get back at our boss for it and expose her dirty dealings. They're fleecing the company, preventing it from growing. And the owner is a trusting man, and he's old. He's easy to deceive." "All right, go. But don't be surprised later," Liam said, hugging Katie and kissing the top of her head. "Surprised by what you'll see." "We'll meet again." "I'd be happy if we did," Katie said, burying her face in his shirt. The plane carried Katie back to her city, but now she wasn't afraid of anything. All her anger and resentment were left behind somewhere at the bottom of the sea. And in her heart, love had taken root. In a few days, she had to go back to work where the universally hated boss and her director husband ruled the roost. She had absolutely no desire to go. She wanted to quit, but Liam supported her and practically forced her to pull herself together and show up at the company. When Katie walked into the office, she noticed that everyone seemed tense. Sharon was dressed in her best clothes and had put on a full face of makeup, which meant only one thing: the owner of the company was coming. But why, Katie didn't know. And then in the crowded hall, the old owner of the firm appeared. Sharon stood at attention before him, casting a sly glance at her husband, who was fawning over the old man. "Friends," the owner addressed the employees. "I'm tired. I'm retiring. The company now belongs to another man, a worthy and strong leader. Please give a warm welcome to Liam Donovan." At that moment, the ground nearly gave way beneath Katie's feet. Standing before her was Liam, her Liam. Her mouth fell open in astonishment, but when he walked over to her, she got scared. "Dear colleagues," he said. "And I, in turn, would like to introduce you to the new director of the company, Miss Catherine Anderson." Katie saw the shocked faces of her colleagues, the terrified exchange of glances between Sharon and her husband, and everything fell into place. Katie smiled and looked at Liam. "Your first directive, Miss Director," he said. And Katie did what the entire office had secretly been dreaming of. She walked up to her boss and her husband and said in a firm voice, "You're both fired." Rose was appointed the new department head, and within a few months, the company's performance soared, and employee salaries increased significantly. 6 months later, Katie and Liam got married, throwing a huge corporate wedding. And the husband's wedding gift to Katie was the repurchased house of her grandmother, where they settled down, bringing Aunt Nina to live with them. 2 years passed in a flash. One warm family evening, there was a timid knock at Katie's door. Liam opened it. On the doorstep stood Gregory. He didn't look well, paunchy, unshaven, in a worn-out tracksuit. His whole appearance evoked nothing but pity. "Can I help you?" Liam asked, wiping his hands on an apron. "I'm here to see my wife." "She lives here now, right?" Gregory asked, out of habit. "Your wife isn't here." "Only mine is," Liam replied. He knew who was standing before him. Honey, who is it? Did they bring the milk? Katie's gentle voice called out as she appeared holding a curly-haired 1-year-old boy. She froze when she saw her ex-husband in such a state. Bella left me. She took all the money and ran. Gregory blurted out his misfortune. And you, I see you're happy. Forgive me. I forgave you a long time ago, Katie replied. Liam scowled at the uninvited guest, and Gregory, sensing he wasn't welcome, turned and walked away, feeling the door close behind him. The image of the child was seared into Gregory's mind, and regret for his mistakes tore him apart. That could have been my son, he thought. And once again he blamed fate and women for the fact that he had never found happiness.